AI for locking my family out after they tried to take over my Christmas cabin? I'm Bella, 52, and in my family, I've always been the daughter people remembered after the plates were counted, after the gifts were wrapped, and after the plans were already made without me. My mother, Carol, calls it holiday chaos. My older brother, Eric, calls it not a big deal. His wife, Melissa, usually gives me this tight little smile like she's embarrassed for me, not by them. I don't have a dramatic job or some glamorous life. I have a quiet one. I work, I pay my bills, I make my own coffee in the morning, and for years I told myself that being steady and useful would eventually make my family see me. Every Christmas I mailed cards. I bought gifts. I made the same cinnamon rolls my grandmother used to make, wrapped them in foil, and brought them over like an offering. And every year somehow I was the one who got forgotten. One year, nobody told me Christmas dinner had been moved from 6 to 2. I showed up with warm cinnamon rolls and found dessert plates already in the sink. My mother opened the door and said, "Oh, honey, I thought Eric told you." Eric was sitting in the recliner with his feet up, eating the last slice of his favorite pecan pie. He shrugged and said, "Must have slipped my mind." Another year, I wasn't added to the family group chat until Christmas morning, after everyone had already picked names for the gift exchange. My cousin mentioned it by accident when she asked me, "Who did you get for Secret Santa?" I said, "What Secret Santa?" My mother sighed like I was making a scene and said, "Bella, don't start. You know how busy the holidays get." Busy. That was the word she used for everything. Busy was why nobody saved me a seat. Busy was why nobody noticed my gifts sitting unopened in a corner. Busy was why Eric's favorite dessert was remembered every year, while my presence was treated like an optional decoration someone forgot to pull out of storage. Eric was never forgotten. Never once. His favorite pie was always on the counter. Melissa's dietary preferences were always remembered. Their arrival time mattered. Their kids' schedules mattered when they were younger. Their moods mattered. If Eric was tired, the whole room got quiet. If Eric was struggling, everyone adjusted. If Eric needed money, help, forgiveness, patience, or a clean version of the truth, my mother handed it over before he finished asking. And me? I got, "Don't be so sensitive." For a long time, I believed sensitive was the worst thing a person could be. So I became easy. I became understanding. I became the person who said, "It's okay," even when it wasn't. I laughed off the wrong dinner time. I said the missing invitation was no big deal. I mailed gifts even when nobody confirmed they received them. Then last December, I sat in my car outside my apartment with a bag of flour and cream cheese in the passenger seat, getting ready to make cinnamon rolls for people who had not told me what time dinner was. I opened my phone and saw a photo my cousin had posted. There they all were, standing in front of my mother's Christmas tree. Carol in red lipstick. Eric with his arm around Melissa. Aunt Ruth holding a glass of punch. The caption said, "Christmas crew same as always." I stared at the picture long enough for my phone screen to dim. Nobody had forgotten to take the photo. Nobody had forgotten Eric's pie. Nobody had forgotten to wear matching sweaters. They had forgotten me. Or maybe for the first time I let myself admit they hadn't forgotten at all. They had simply decided I was optional. I didn't text my mother. I didn't ask why. I didn't send a sad paragraph nobody would read carefully. I put the flour back in the cabinet, made myself toast for dinner, and watched the snow fall against my window. A few weeks later I started looking at cabins. Not big ones. Not fancy ones with hot tubs and giant kitchens. I wanted something small, quiet, and mine. I wanted a place where I could hear wind in the trees instead of my mother saying I was overreacting. A place where I could wake up on Christmas morning without checking my phone to see if anyone had remembered me. Took months. I saved carefully. I walked away from 2 places that looked cute online but smelled like damp carpet and regret. Then I found it. A little cabin with scuffed wood floors, a fireplace that needed cleaning, a tiny kitchen, and windows that looked out at trees. The front porch leaned slightly to one side. The bedroom closet was barely a closet. The bathroom sink dripped until I replaced a washer. But the first time I stood in the main room, I felt my shoulders drop. It wasn't perfect. It was mine. By December, I had a small Christmas tree in the corner with a slightly crooked star on top. I put snow boots on a mat by the door. I folded a thick blanket over the arm of an old chair near the fireplace. I brought up my grandmother's ornament box and hung 3 of her faded glass ornaments on the tree, even though I was terrified of breaking them. The week before Christmas, I stopped at the grocery store and bought soup ingredients, coffee, hot cocoa, peppermint creamer, and everything I needed for cinnamon rolls. Not enough for 20 people. Not enough to prove anything. Just enough for me. That night, with the fire going and my old mug warm in my hands, I took a picture of the cabin from the doorway. You could see the little tree, the crooked star, the boots, the folded blanket, and just enough of the fireplace glow to make it look peaceful. I posted it with the caption, "Best gift I ever gave myself." I posted it because I was proud, not because I was inviting anyone. For about an hour the comments were sweet. "Beautiful. When are we visiting? Looks cozy." Aunt Ruth commented, "You deserve every bit of peace in that place." I smiled at that one. Aunt Ruth was my mother's younger sister, and she had always been kind in small ways. She never fought the family machine, but she noticed things. She slipped me leftovers when I showed up late to dinners I had been told the wrong time for. She called me after birthdays where my mother forgot to mention there was cake. She wasn't brave exactly, but she wasn't blind. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my mother. Not congratulations. Not I'm happy for you. Not even when did you buy a cabin? It said, "Good morning. Eric and Melissa will be coming to stay with you for a while after Christmas. They need a fresh start. It will be good for all of you." I sat on the edge of my bed and read it twice. Then I read it a third time because my brain kept trying to find the question inside it. There wasn't one. I typed, "No. That doesn't work for me, and the cabin is not available for anyone to move into." For 3 minutes nothing happened. Then my phone started buzzing like someone had dropped it into a hornet's nest. My mother had moved the conversation into a group chat called Family Christmas Plans. A group chat I had not been in until that exact moment. Carol wrote, "Bella is being difficult about the cabin. Eric and Melissa need a place for a few months, and she has plenty of room. That's what family does." I stared at the name of the chat. Family Christmas Plans. I hadn't even known it existed. Eric replied first. "Wow." Melissa wrote, "We're not asking for forever." My cousin Dana sent, "Wait, what's going on?" My mother ignored her and wrote, "Christmas is not the time to be selfish, Bella." I typed, "You announced a move-in to a house you do not own. The answer is no." Eric wrote, "It's a cabin. You're acting like we asked for a mansion." I could practically hear his voice. Annoyed, offended, like my boundary was a personal insult. Melissa added, "We only need a few months. And honestly, I thought you'd want the cabin to actually be lived in." I looked around the room I had spent months cleaning, painting, and slowly furnishing. The room where my grandmother's ornaments hung from a tree I had bought myself. The room where I had slept better than I had in years. It was lived in. By me. My mother wrote, "You have all that space and you'd rather let it sit empty?" I answered, "It is not empty. I use it." Eric replied, "You don't even use all that space. The cabin had 1 bedroom. 1. Before I could respond, Melissa wrote, "It's not like you have a family of your own to use all that space." The chat went quiet for a few seconds. Not because anyone was shocked, I don't think. More because she had said the quiet part out loud. I stared at that sentence longer than I should have. It landed in that old soft place where every forgotten invitation had piled up. All those years I had tried to prove I belonged to them, and there Melissa was telling me I didn't have a family of my own while trying to move into my home. I typed, "Thank you for saying the quiet part out loud." Then I put my phone face down on the table. 10 minutes later it buzzed again. "Eric, we can bring our own furniture so it won't be a burden." Melissa, "Is there room for our sectional or should we put it in storage?" Eric, "How steep is the driveway? Just thinking about a truck." Melissa, "Can packages be sent to the cabin address while we figure things out?" Carol, "Do you have a spare key, honey? You should leave one under a planter for emergencies." That was when the feeling in my stomach changed. Until then, I had thought they were pressuring me to say yes. But those messages sounded like people who had already decided yes for me. I picked up the phone and typed, Why are we talking about keys and moving trucks when I already said no? My mother replied, "Don't make this ugly." Eric wrote, "Mom said you'd be okay with it once you calm down." I took a screenshot. I don't know why that message made my hand steady, but it did. Maybe because there it was finally. Proof that my mother wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't making an innocent holiday mistake. She had told them I would fold. I started a folder on my phone and named it Cabin. I saved every screenshot. That evening I called my friend Nora. Nora and I had known each other long enough that she didn't need the whole family history every time. She listened while I read the messages out loud. She was quiet for a moment after Melissa's line about me not having a family of my own. Then she said, "Bella, a locked door is not cruelty when someone is trying to take your home." "I know," I said, though my voice didn't sound sure. "No," she said gently. "You know it in your head. Now act like you know it in your bones." The next morning I called a locksmith. I changed both exterior locks. I installed a doorbell camera. I printed the receipt and put it in a folder with my property documents on the kitchen table. I also called the local non-emergency line and asked what I should do if relatives showed up and tried to enter a property they did not have permission to use. The woman on the phone was calm and practical. She told me to keep written proof of my refusal, not to open the door if I felt pressured, and to call back if anyone attempted entry or refused to leave. It wasn't dramatic. It was grounding. Then I sent one message to my mother, Eric, and Melissa in a separate text thread. You do not have permission to enter the cabin, stay at the cabin, store belongings at the cabin, receive mail at the cabin, use the cabin address, or give the address to anyone for deliveries or forwarding. This applies now and in the future. Do not come to the cabin unless I invite you in writing. My mother responded almost immediately. I didn't raise you to turn your back on family. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to defend myself. I wrote, "You raised me to be useful. I'm done confusing that with being loved." Then I muted her. For about half a day, I thought maybe the worst of it was over. Then Melissa accidentally sent the wrong message to the family group chat. If we get mail sent there before New Year's, it'll be harder for her to change her mind. It was deleted within seconds. But not before I screenshotted it. My hands went cold when I read it. Not because I believed one piece of mail magically gave someone rights. I knew it wasn't that simple. But Melissa clearly thought it would create leverage. She was not asking for help. She was looking for a way to make my no harder to enforce. Eric immediately wrote, "Wrong chat." Then he deleted that too. I screenshotted that as well. 2 minutes later my mother called. I let it ring. She called again. I let it ring again. Then Aunt Ruth texted me privately. "I don't want to stir things up, but I think you need to see this." A screenshot came through from a smaller chat I had never been part of. My mother had written, "Once Eric is inside, Bella won't kick him out. She complains, then does the right thing." Below that, Eric had written, "Truck is reserved for the 26th just in case." Melissa had added, "I already started telling people we might be moving somewhere quiet. Please don't let Bella make this awkward." I sat at my kitchen table with the property folder in front of me and felt something settle inside me. It wasn't rage. Rage would have been easier. It was clarity. Aunt Ruth sent another message. "Your mother has been telling people you agreed. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. You weren't imagining it, Bella." I typed back, "Thank you." She replied, "Also, Eric and Melissa do have somewhere to go. Melissa's cousin offered them the basement apartment. They said it was too cramped and had too many rules." I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because it was exactly what I should have expected. They didn't need shelter. They wanted my shelter because it came with no rent, no rules, and no shame. Melissa's cousin would expect them to contribute. I would be expected to be grateful they had chosen me to inconvenience. That night I made a public post. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't use names. I didn't post the screenshots yet. I wrote it like a weather report. Small update since my cabin photo got so much attention. No, it is not a family storage unit. No, it is not emergency housing for relatives who already made plans without asking me. And no, being forgotten every Christmas does not mean I become available whenever someone needs a roof. Then I turned off notifications. The next day, my phone looked like it had tried to survive a storm. My mother left a voicemail saying, "I was only trying to keep this family together." Eric texted, "You always have to make everything about you." Melissa wrote, "You're making this so much colder than it needs to be." A cousin messaged, "I didn't know they hadn't asked you." Aunt Ruth wrote, "I'm proud of you." Nora sent, "I'll bring soup. You keep the door locked." I didn't answer most of them. On Christmas Eve, I drove to the cabin with groceries in the back seat, and a strange calm sitting next to me like a passenger. I had expected to feel lonely. Instead, I felt tired in a clean way, like I had finally put down something heavy. The cabin smelled like pine, coffee, and the faint smoke of the first fire I had started that afternoon. I made soup in the little kitchen and set cinnamon roll dough on the counter under a towel. Outside, snow collected on the porch railing. Inside, my crooked little star leaned stubbornly to the left. Around 6, I opened social media even though I knew better. There they were. Christmas dinner photos. My mother's table was full. Eric sat in the chair closest to the kitchen, the good chair, the one my father used to sit in before he died. Melissa held a wine glass and smiled like nothing in the world had ever been denied to her. Someone had made Eric's pecan pie. The caption said, "Full house, full hearts." I looked at that photo and felt the old ache try to rise. Then I thought they had room for me at my cabin apparently, just not at their table. I closed the app. At 8:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with a doorbell camera alert. I was sitting on the couch with a bowl of soup balanced on my knee. For 1 second I thought maybe it was an animal on the porch. Then the video opened. Eric was standing at my cabin door in a winter coat, holding a cardboard box labeled kitchen. Melissa stood behind him with 2 overnight bags and a smaller box labeled office. My mother was near the porch steps, wrapped in a scarf, looking irritated and cold. Behind them, parked crookedly in the driveway, was a vehicle packed with boxes. I could see one labeled winter clothes. They had come straight from Christmas dinner. For a few seconds I just watched. Eric knocked hard. Then he tried the doorknob. It didn't move. Melissa leaned closer to the window and saw the printed notice I had taped inside. "This property is not available for move-in, temporary or otherwise. Do not leave belongings here. Do not attempt to enter." I watched her mouth tighten. My phone rang. "Eric." I answered but didn't say anything. He started immediately. "Are you serious right now?" "Yes," I said. "You changed the locks?" "Yes." "You're really going to leave your own brother outside on Christmas?" I looked at the camera feed. My brother, who had eaten dinner at a table I wasn't invited to, was standing on my porch with moving boxes, asking why I was leaving him outside. I said, "You left me outside every Christmas for years. The difference is, I never showed up with a moving truck." There was a pause. Then my mother's voice came through, sharp and shaky. "Bella, open this door right now. This is ridiculous." "I'm not at the cabin door," I said. "And I'm not opening it." Melissa took the phone. Her voice had that smooth, reasonable tone she used when she wanted witnesses to think she was the calm one. "Bella, we only need a few months. We brought our own things. We weren't trying to burden you." "If it was only a few months," I said, "why were you trying to get mail sent here before I agreed?" Silence. On the camera, Melissa turned her head slightly toward Eric. I continued, "And why did Carol tell people that once Eric was inside I wouldn't kick him out?" My mother said, "That was taken out of context." "No," I said. "It was taken in a screenshot." Eric got back on the phone. "You've always acted like you're better than us." "No," I said. "I acted like if I loved you enough, you would eventually treat me like family. That's over." He started yelling then. Not words that mattered. Just noise. Accusations. Selfish. Bitter. Dramatic. Same old vocabulary, louder because it wasn't working. I waited until he paused for air. Then I said, "I'm not discussing this while you yell at me. My answer is not changing. Leave my property." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from regret. I opened the family group chat, the one I had never been invited to until they needed an audience for my guilt. I posted the screenshots in order. First my original text saying no. Then my mother saying I would come around. Then Melissa's message about forwarding mail. Then Aunt Ruth's screenshot of my mother saying, "Once Eric is inside, Bella won't kick him out. She complains, then does the right thing. Then Eric's truck is reserved for the 26th just in case." Under them I wrote, since everyone was told I agreed, here's what was actually said. Nobody has permission to enter, stay, store items, receive mail, or use my address. Do not contact me about this again tonight. For once, nobody replied right away. The silence felt better than any apology. On the camera, I watched Eric pace on the porch. Melissa wiped at her face, but I couldn't tell if she was crying or just angry. My mother stood stiffly by the steps, no longer performing distress now that there was nobody in front of her to perform for. A few minutes later, Aunt Ruth wrote in the chat, "Carol, you told us Bella had agreed. That was wrong." Then my cousin Dana wrote, "I'm sorry, Bella. I didn't know." Another cousin added, "This is not okay." Not everyone jumped in. Most didn't. That was fine. I wasn't looking for a courtroom verdict. I just needed the lie to stop breathing. Eric called again. I didn't answer. My mother called. I didn't answer. Melissa texted, "Where are we supposed to go?" I replied once. "Melissa's cousin offered you a place. Use it." No answer. On the camera, Eric stared at his phone. Then he said something to Melissa that made her throw both hands up. My mother snapped at him. He snapped back. For a moment, they looked less like a united family and more like three people who had lost the person they were used to blaming. They loaded the boxes back into the vehicle. They didn't become homeless. They became inconvenienced. There's a difference. When the driveway was empty again, I saved the camera clip and set my phone on the table. Then I cried. Not loud. Not dramatically. Just enough for my body to release what my voice had refused to carry for years. A little after 9, headlights swept across the front window. My stomach tightened until I saw Nora step out of her car holding a covered pot and a grocery bag. She knocked once and called through the door. "It's me." I brought soup, pie, and the emotional support of being right. I laughed so hard I had to wipe my face. I opened the door for her. That mattered to me. I opened the door because I wanted to, not because someone had trained me to. Nora came in, kicked snow off her boots, and looked around the cabin with a soft smile. "So this is the famous crime scene," she said. "The crime was saying no," I said. "Very serious offense in your family." She put the pot on the stove and hugged me without making a big speech. That was one of the things I loved about Nora. She didn't try to turn my pain into a lesson. She just stood there until I stopped shaking. We ate soup at the little table by the window. We split one of the cinnamon rolls before the icing had fully set. We drank hot cocoa with too much peppermint creamer. At some point, she fixed the crooked star on my tree, then decided it looked better crooked and tilted it back. For once, Christmas Eve didn't feel like a room I was trying to get into. It felt like a room I owned. The next morning, I woke up to more messages. Aunt Ruth had written, "I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner. I should have." Dana wrote, "I owe you an apology for assuming the worst." Two other relatives sent private messages that were softer than public support, and probably all they were brave enough to give. I accepted the apologies that felt real and ignored the ones that came with, "But you have to understand." Eric sent a long text about how I had humiliated him. I didn't read past the first line. Melissa sent, "You could have handled this privately." I almost laughed at that. They had dragged me into a group chat to shame me into handing over my home. They had arrived with boxes on Christmas night. They had planned to use my address without permission. But now privacy mattered. I deleted the message. My mother left a voicemail. Her voice was calmer, which somehow made it worse. "I hope you're happy," she said. "You ruined Christmas." I stood in my kitchen, looking at the mug in my hand, and realized I didn't feel the need to call her back and explain. That was new. A week later, I sent her one written message. "I am willing to have limited contact if you respect my boundaries. That means no guilt trips, no using family members to pressure me, no making plans involving my home or my time without asking, and no pretending this was a misunderstanding. If you can't do that, we will not be in contact." She responded 3 days later. "You're being very cold." I didn't answer. Eric and Melissa ended up staying with Melissa's cousin. I heard through Aunt Ruth that they complained about the space, the rules, and being expected to help with utilities. Apparently, the basement apartment was not good for their mental health. I'm sure being told no was very difficult for them. The truck reservation was canceled. The mail forwarding never went through. The cabin stayed mine. In January, I drove back up alone. The snow was dirty along the road, and the cabin was cold when I arrived. I made coffee, started a fire, and sat on the floor by the hearth while the room slowly warmed. There were still things to fix. A loose cabinet handle. A window that whistled when the wind came from the east. A porch step I needed to replace before spring. But I didn't look around and see empty space anymore. I saw peace. I saw a door that locked. I saw a table where nobody could tell me there wasn't room for me. My family said I ruined Christmas by not opening my door. But the truth is, they only called it Christmas when I was useful, quiet, and easy to move around. That year, I finally stopped waiting for someone else to pull out a chair. I kept the cabin. I kept the crooked star. I kept my grandmother's ornaments wrapped carefully in their box when the season ended. And I started a new tradition. Cinnamon rolls for people who actually notice when I'm in the room. The cabin was not the real gift. The real gift was realizing I didn't have to unlock the door for people who only remembered me when they needed somewhere to go. They said I left them outside on Christmas. For once, I was not the forgotten daughter standing outside someone else's family. I was inside my own home, warm, safe, and finally free. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.